Hello fellow YouTubers, welcome back to the CatchMeOffroad YouTube channel. Today is a beautiful day out here in Michigan. I'm getting ready to install the front perch collars made by Foutz Motorsports on the Ram TRX. I just wanted to give you guys a quick view of what it looks like during the day, since the last video was a little dark out. That's where I sit right now with the rear 2-inch spacers, and you can see them right there, the little silver pieces there. So it has a little bit of rake. It looks very factory-like, just up a little bit higher. And then the 37's obviously filling the wheel wells quite a bit. So hopefully when I get the front spacers in there, or perch collars, it will lift the front a little, help get some more room around the tire and the wheel well there. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the vehicle inside the shop. Oh, and I just raced a Mustang Mach-E on the way over here, and I beat them, which I was surprised. It's an electric Mustang from Ford. Unfortunately, I didn't get any video of it, but it was a close race. It was from a light. We went up to about 90, and it was, I just kept pulling ahead further and further. So pretty impressed with the 37s on it. It did pretty well. So anyway, enough chit chat. Let's get the thing inside. All right, guys, the vehicle's up on the lift, and I've gone ahead and taken a lot of stuff apart already. So I took the tire off first. I loosened the upper control arm bolt right here where it goes into the spindle. I removed the tie rod end right here from the spindle. I removed the sway bar end link, and I had to loosen this guy up as well, the top one, just because I couldn't get this one to pivot enough to get it out. So I had to pull the top, just loosen the nut on the back here. Let me give you some light. I had to loosen this nut up right here, get that to sway freely. And then, oh, very important, one of the first steps you have to do actually before you do everything else is remove the, this is the ride height sensor. And there's a few ways you can remove it, I think. I'm guessing that you can pop the socket out of the ball, but I just removed the nut. It was a little easier, and I wanted to make sure I didn't damage anything. So that's the way I would recommend doing it. It just unthreads from right there on the upper control arm. And then I removed these 3 nuts on top right here that hold the shock into the housing, into the perch, and then just dropped everything down. I'm actually resting everything on this little chair, which is probably a bad idea. I tried using a strap, but there's nothing really to strap to. So anyway, the shock swings out. Oh, and you also have to loosen this lower shock mounting bolt, this big large one. It's like a 30mm, which is huge, so I struggled to find a socket, but I found one that worked. And then the shock will just pivot out towards you. Everything kind of falls out. And now we're going to go ahead and compress the spring and try to install this perch collar down here at the bottom somewhere. One thing that's very nice about the TRX that the Raptor didn't do was the engineers decided to use the same size nut on the ball joint, on the sway bar link, on the upper control arm, on everything. So like all these bolts or studs are the same size, same diameter. This one, this one, this one. It's super easy. So it's all a, I don't even know what size it is. I think it's this guy right here, maybe. One of these, I don't know. 22mm maybe. Sorry, don't quote me on that, but it's one of those, and they're all the same size, which is super helpful. You just pop one off and get to the next one. So I'm gonna go ahead and compress this now and see how the perch collar installs on there. This is what it looks like when it comes from Foutz, just like this, assembled. I haven't touched anything. I just unwrapped it. It has one Allen head on this side, one on this side, and see they're facing opposite directions. And then it also has this thing right here, which is an alignment pin. And apparently this thing is supposed to sit right under the, or right above this guy, which is the live valve basically. And it sits something like that, I think. But we're gonna find out here in a second. Yeah, it looks like there's a circle right there, a bolt of some sort that might align with this guy. So actually it probably goes like this now that I think about it. You know, this probably holds the spring on and goes just like that. So we're gonna get that on there and then I'll continue the video. So I went ahead and compressed the springs a ton, a lot more than I thought they would need to be compressed. And this rental tool I got is kind of getting tore up because there's no washer in here. But compressed it a ton, and then was able to fit this guy right here, which is the alignment tool. That fits in here nicely. This black part right here, the perch, the factory perch, needs to be pushed up, and it was kind of stuck on this, so I had to pry it a little, which I probably shouldn't have done. You can see it mangled my, or it marred my aluminum housing a little bit. I shouldn't have done that. I just was getting frustrated, couldn't get it off. and so I started hammering on it, and I chipped my sticker a little bit, and then I started prying on it, and it finally popped off. I remember I had the same problem with the Raptor Gen 2 as well. I think sometimes you just need to use a little, maybe oil or something, some kind of lube, and patience. But got that pushed up, got the alignment tool in, and then getting these two halves of the collar on was a huge pain too. I actually had to compress the spring even more, way past this, where there was another ½ inch in here, just to try to get these guys in, because they have such a long collar that goes inside the spring housing, inside the black factory perch collar. And finally got them in. I just got done putting blue Loctite on them, as you can see, some blue Loctite right there, and I torqued them to 25 foot-pounds as instructed in the installation instructions. So this is all done now. I'm getting ready to release the tension on the springs, or on the spring, and make sure everything's aligned right, and then put it all back together and start on the next side. And the truck is all buttoned up now, minus the tire. That was a huge pain getting this together by myself. I had to pry this, so the whole knuckle kind of hangs, or the spindle kind of hangs loose when everything's taken apart, and so you got to hold it back up here while pulling down on the upper control arm really hard, because it's got pretty stiff bushings in it and it wants to stay upwards. It doesn't want to come down. So I had to use a pry bar, stick it in the spring, and kind of pry downwards like this. Excuse me, sorry, I had to sneeze. To hold that down, to get this ball joint back in there, and then everything else was decently simple, putting in all the steering stabilizer, or the sway bar, and the tie rod end. And then I remembered to put back on the 10mm nut, which connects the ride height sensor, and then the three bolts up top. You have to put 3 nuts on the studs to hold the spring in place, the whole coil assembly. So this side is done. That's the perch collar right there that you can see. You can see the alignment pin is still in there, right there, and it looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a 5-minute break, and then go ahead and work on the other side. Alright guys, so we're on the driver's side now, and I am already done. So this side was a little more difficult to do. I'm not sure why. I had to compress the spring a lot more to get this on, and once again I found that cursing and hammering stuff works pretty well, so I did that. I went that route. You can see my hammer marks there from the rubber mallet. They say in the instructions that when you're doing the driver's side that you need to disconnect the reservoir for the shock, but I did not have to, just because I put a strap around this, secured one end of the strap to this bolt, wrapped it around here, and the other end to this back bolt right here, both lower control arm bolts, and held the spring up so it doesn't flop out too far. Because the reason they say you need to loosen that is because this line here is pretty close. So when the whole coil comes outwards like this, it's kind of pulling this line taut. So like I said, I just put a strap to limit how far it could come down. Worked fine. I didn't have any issues with that. I did have to compress this one, like I said, a little more, but got it on there, Loctited it. 25 foot-pounds is what I torqued it to, and then assembled everything. I put the 3 bolts back in up top, put the ball joint in by prying down, same way I did on the other side. Don't forget this little guy, your ride height sensor once again, your tie rod, and your steering stabilizer bar, or roll anti-sway, or whatever it's called, sway bar. So yeah, everything's buttoned up right now. It's ready to be. I sprayed some penetrating oil on the spring compressors, and I missed and hit the frame, so that's not a leak. It's just this silicoil stuff right here. But the tires are ready to be put back on. My massive Turo 37s, which weigh 135 pounds each, wheel and tire. So they're super hard to get up here, so I usually lower the truck and put them on the ground. But yeah, once that's on, don't forget you do need an alignment when you do any front suspension work. So I will be getting an alignment done. Hopefully someone in town can get the truck in there. It's pretty wide already as it is, and then add the 37s and it makes it even worse with these offset wheels. But alignment, and then the other important thing that a lot of people forget is your headlights. You need to make sure you aim them right, because once you lift the front end up, obviously the headlights are going to be up higher, and you're going to be blinding oncoming traffic and annoying people. So make sure you get that taken care of too. Since I did the front and back, I'm hoping it leveled it out and there's no need to adjust the headlights, but I'll test it tonight. Otherwise, let me button this thing up and we'll get some videos. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are outside now, and here you can see the final product. All buttoned up. I drove around the parking lot a little bit, hit some, you know, the little bump right here. Tried to, you know, flex the suspension just a little bit, compress the front a little bit, because it was sitting really high inside and it kind of settled a little bit. But I'm sure it'll settle even more on the drive home and in the next few days. But it's very close to level now. So the thing about the TRX is the fender flares come up higher in the front than they do in the back, I've heard. So sometimes when you put a leveling kit on it and the truck is actually level, like based on the side steps or based on the roof or the bed line, the truck might be level, but it looks like it's sitting nose high just because of how the fenders are. I'm not sure how true that is, but mine seems pretty level regardless. The gap between the tire and the fender and the front and back looks about the same right now. I'm kind of worried now that when I add my extra spare tire, so I have one spare tire under the truck now, when I move that to the back of the truck and put in the bed cage and then add a second spare tire, it might weigh it down a little bit more. I do have my tools in the back right now, so normally that's all I travel with when I'm going off-roading. So it's how it sits right now is how it'll be off-roaded with the addition of one more tire in the back. But yeah, that's it. I'll go home tonight and drive around and check the headlights, make sure they're not up too high. And I just, in the parking lot, I did some rubbing tests to see if it would rub, and the rubbing's completely gone on level ground. But if I turn really hard and hit the brakes, I get rubbing, a little bit of rubbing on the passenger side, and it's right, or sorry, on the driver's side, and it's right there. You can kind of see where it rubs just a hair, right there. So I might just have to trim this little piece off or something. But it does do a lot better now with the rubbing issue, at least on level ground. Off-road, I know it's still gonna have issues with the 37s, but for now I'm happy. It looks a lot better. I like the truck sitting up higher like this with a 37, so the tires don't fill the wheel wells too much. It looks like this is how it should have came from the factory with 37s. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. And oh, one person commented on my last video that I'm sacrificing off-road performance just to make it a street queen or highway princess or something, I can't remember. And my reply to that is, so the rear spacers are not affecting performance in any way. We're literally lifting, it's as if you had a longer spring, a 2-inch longer spring. It's not affecting my travel. The shock is limiting the rear travel on compression and on rebound in the back. So the spring is not really doing much. Adding the 2-inch spacer is just getting it up higher. And the front, we're adding preload, which is the better way of, you know, obviously the best solution is to have longer springs, but since those aren't available yet for the TRX, the next best thing is perch collars as opposed to a spacer that sits on top of or below the shock, well, on top of, I guess. Adding preload to it, like we're doing right here, is really just making the spring sit a little higher. But it's also, there's a downside to it. We are losing a little bit of travel because we now have 1.5 inches of spacer where there used to be some spring, and so we're gonna bottom out the spring quicker. That's assuming that the shock doesn't bottom out first. I have no idea what it'll do on this truck. So type up in the comments if you know the answer to that. But essentially, I don't think I'm really doing anything hindering it performance-wise. I did the same mods on my Gen 2 Raptor, beat the heck out of it, off-roaded it for many years. It did great, never had any issues with that, with the mods I did. So just kind of following suit on this one. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, guys. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I'll catch you on the next one.